A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark, chapter 5, the Gerasene demoniac. They reached the territory of the Gerasenes on the other side of the lake, and when he disembarked, a man with an unclean spirit at once came out from the tombs towards him. The man lived among the tombs, and no one could secure him any more, even with a cord, because he had often been secured with fetters and cords, but had snapped the cords and rubbed away the fetters, and no one had the strength to control him. All night and all day, among the tombs and in the mountains, he was howling and gashing himself with stones. Catching sight of Jesus from a distance, he ran up and fell at his feet and cried out at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, do not torture me." For Jesus had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." Then he asked, "What is your name?" He answered, "My name is Legion, for there are many of us." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the district. Now on the mountainside there was a great herd of pigs feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us to the pigs, so that we may enter them." So he gave them leave, and the unclean spirits came out and went into the pigs, and the herd charged down the cliff into the lake, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the lake. Their herdsmen ran off and told their story in the town and in the countryside, and the people came to see what had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac, the man who had had the legion in him, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who had witnessed it reported what had happened to the demoniac and about the pigs. Then they began to implore Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed begged to be allowed to stay with him. Jesus refused, but said to him, "Go home to your people and tell them all that the Lord in his mercy has done for you." So the man went off and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. Cure of the woman with a hemorrhage, the daughter of Jairus, raised to life. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered round him, and he stayed by the lake. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came up, and seeing him, fell at his feet and pleaded with him repeatedly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be saved and may live." Jesus went with him and a large crowd followed him. They were jostling him. Now, there was a woman who had suffered from a hemorrhage for 12 years. Having endured much under many physicians, she had spent all she had without getting any benefit from it. In fact, she was getting worse. She had heard about Jesus, and she came up through the crowd and touched his tunic from behind, thinking, "If I can just touch his clothes, I shall be saved." And at once, the source of the bleeding dried up, and she felt in her body that she was cured of her sickness. And at once, aware of the power that had gone out from him, Jesus turned round in the crowd and said, "Touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see how the crowd is jostling you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" But he began looking round to see who had done it. Then the woman came forward in fear and trembling, because she knew what had happened to her. And she fell before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "My daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be free of your sickness." While he was still speaking, some people arrived from the house of the leader of the synagogue to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why put the teacher to any further trouble?" But Jesus overheard what they were saying, and he said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid. Only have faith." And he allowed no one to follow with him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. So they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, with people weeping and wailing unrestrainedly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and crying? The child has not died. She is asleep." But they ridiculed him. So he turned them all out, and taking with him the child's father and mother and his own companions, he went into the place where the child lay. And taking the child by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And at once the little girl got up and began to walk around, for she was 12 years old. At once they were overcome with astonishment, and he gave them strict orders that no one should know about it, and said that she should be given something to eat. The word of the Lord.